Hello everybody, and thanks for watching another episode of The Other 99. On today's episode, we're going to put on our nostalgia goggles for a second, and go back to the very first episode ever produced for The Other 99, Azusa Lost but Seeking. If you haven't seen the original episode or need a quick refresher, click on the annotation or follow the links down in the description. A commander deck is never finished. This is a proven fact. New sets come out with awesome new cards, or sometimes an old card you've never considered before catches your eye. Such is the case with Azusa, which has evolved considerably over the past year. The basic game plan of the deck is still the same, but card choices have been refined. First, let's take a look at the basics. 6 forests were cut because who cares? There's still 30 in the deck. Next, let's take a look at how the draw power and filtering has changed over the past year. Regal Force can draw tons of cards, but not in a deck that runs a mere 13 green creatures and only 3 reliable token producers. Skull Clamp is awesome with tokens and dying creatures, but the deck runs so few creatures that often it just sat around unused. Horn of Greed is extremely powerful in this deck, but for every one game when you cast it turn 3 or 4, there are 6 other games where you just draw it later in the game and never want to play it, which just makes the card a dead card. So with what will we be replacing these cards? Sylvan Library was a clear oversight in the original list, and has been a huge help in filtering draws. Not to mention, paying 4 life for an extra card isn't outside the realm of possibility. Groot Primal Hunter makes tokens for a beatdown plan, draws tons of cards off of a fatty without having to sacrifice it, and his ultimate means your opponents lose if they can't find a solution. Staff of Nin may be expensive at 6, but reliable draw power is something this deck can't afford to pass up, considering its biggest weakness is running out of steam. Not to mention, sometimes the ping ability means you can snipe off a few small creatures. Even some of the win cons in the deck have changed recently. Garruk Wildspeaker. In theory, the overrun was awesome, but all he ended up doing was untapping utility lands. Useful, but not so much that he earned his slot. Loxodon Warhammer was great in the deck, but was cut because it didn't contribute to the deck's game plan. And in their place, we're putting Beacon of Creation. It's the only token-producing sorcery in the whole deck, but the fact that it recycles itself makes it very useful. There are quite a few non-basics in this deck, but the basic count is still extremely high. Several cards have been cut from the deck to make room for some new sweepers and removal. Tower of Calamities is an awesome card and can be very good, but was cut for more reliable removal. Style points lost. Karn Liberated is exiling removal, which is fantastic, especially because it's repeatable if he sticks around. Even if he doesn't, this deck can afford to pay 7 to take care of problem permanents. Rain of Thorns is a complete blowout in a deck that loves expensive cards packed with value. Spine of Ishta is an expensive Vindicate, and if it were just that, it would still be worth it. The ability to repeatedly recast it by sacking it to Phyrexia's core makes it almost degenerate. Your opponents won't be able to deal with you destroying a permanent per turn. Now, as for the tutors in the deck, Primeval Titan got cut because he was banned. Scapeshift is the replacement for Primeval Titan. The ramp from Titan was awesome, but the biggest thing he did for the deck was find all the utility non-basics. Scapeshift still does this for us, but without the 6/6 trampling body. The deck's Recursion got a change as well. Cloudstone Curio is another card that is awesome when there are creatures around, but the deck had so few cards to work with that it too went unloved. Buried Ruin is good with the deck's 16 artifacts, and gets ridiculous with life from the loam. Creeping Renaissance. At worst, this is a 2-use regrowth in a deck that can easily afford to do something like flash it back to get Karn and cast said Planeswalker in the same turn. New green ramp spells are always being printed, so out with the old and in with the new. Dryad Arbor. The lure of turn 2 Azusa via Green Sun Zenith just wasn't worth having a land with summoning sickness. Also, using a Zenith for that purpose was rarely worth it. Gaia's Touch was in this deck in case Azusa was too expensive to cast or was countered. But if that didn't happen, or even if it did and you didn't have any lands to play at the time, then Gaia's Touch was a dead card. Viridian Emissary, aka Ed. It's a pet card, but not having Sakura Tribe Elder's ability to sacrifice itself was its downfall. Temple of the False God is just a nice way to get ahead in mana, and with Azusa, it's usually active the turn you play it. Ancient Tomb means turn 2 Azusa and other similar insanity. Also, the deck is so devoted to playing lands that soon you won't even need to tap it and take damage. Boundless Realms is a big, splashy spell, but one that gets most of the forests out of your deck. Not drawing lands constantly means this deck draws nothing but cards that will impact the game. Also, having at least 14 mana off of a Resolve Boundless Realms is powerful for obvious reasons. Mana Crypt was an obvious include, but its price meant waiting until one could be acquired. It's just as powerful as free fast mana appears to be. Taking tons of damage off this card will happen, but turn 1 Azusa is worth the sacrifice. And finally, some new utility lands were added to the deck. Phyrexia's Core is a great Sauk outlet and is comparable to High Market. Homeward Path. This gem from the Commander set has been terrorizing blue players since its addition. Losing to Bribery is no longer a given. Getting Briberied, however, is still a given. Vesuva is a great addition to a deck full of utility non-basics. Thanks again for watching this episode of The Other 99. Building and maintaining a Commander deck is one of the great things about building them in the first place, and this Azusa deck is no exception. Remember to check us out on Twitter and Facebook. And this is Carson with Top Go Productions, and as always, thanks for watching.